Whispers. A romance sleep story, presented by Bedtime Stories. Make yourself comfortable, close your eyes, take a slow, deep breath. And now, let the story begin. The first whisper Lily ever truly paid attention to wasn't the rustle of leaves in the ancient oak that shaded her cottage, nor the gentle lapping of the waves against the shore of Oakhaven Bay. It was the whisper of flour sifting through a fine mesh sieve, settling like soft snow onto the well-worn wooden counter of the crumbly corner. A sound so delicate, so familiar, it was almost a heartbeat in the quiet rhythm of her life. Lily Thorne had built her life, quite literally, around such quiet sounds and comforting aromas. Her tea shop and bakery, nestled on Oakhaven's small main street, was a beacon of warmth and sweetness in a town accustomed to the bracing sea air. From dawn, when the first golden rays of sun kissed the polished brass bell above her door, until dusk, when the last customer reluctantly departed, the air inside the crumbly corner hummed with the scent of cinnamon, cardamom, yeast, and melting chocolate. At 28, Lily was a creature of habit, and she loved her habits. Her mornings began before the gulls had quite woken, with the methodical mixing of dough, the precise measuring of ingredients, and the quiet contemplation of the day's specials. Her hands, dusted perpetually with flour, moved with an practiced grace that belied her gentle nature. She wasn't one for grand adventures or dramatic pronouncements. Her world was small, perfectly sculpted, and filled with the quiet joy of creation. She found profundity in the perfect rise of a scone, a miniature triumph in the delicate swirl of frosting on a cupcake, and deep satisfaction in the contented sigh of a customer taking their first sip of her lavender-infused Earl Grey. Oakhaven was a small town, the kind where everyone knew everyone, and a new face was an event. Lily, despite her quiet demeanor, was a beloved fixture. Her kind smile, her listening ear, and her unparalleled lemon drizzle cake were legendary. She knew the gossip, the joys, and the sorrows of her townsfolk, not because she sought them out, but because they flowed naturally through her shop, carried on the currents of shared tea and pastries. One blustery Tuesday in early autumn, a different kind of whisper snaked through the crumbly corner. It wasn't the gossip of Mrs. Henderson about her prize-winning petunias, nor Mr. Peterson's grumbles about the fishing season. This whisper was of a new arrival. A man, they said. Tall, dark, and decidedly solitary. He had bought the old lighthouse keeper's cottage, a rugged, isolated dwelling, perched precariously on the cliff edge overlooking the bay, a place that had stood empty for years, rumored to be haunted by the echoes of lonely foghorns. Lily, meticulously arranging a tray of cardamom buns, tried to dismiss the whispers. New people came and went in Oakhaven, though rarely did they settle in such a remote spot. Most preferred the warmth of the village center. Still, a faint hum of curiosity stirred beneath her calm surface. She imagined him a grizzled old sailor, perhaps, or a reclusive writer seeking inspiration in the wild beauty of the coast. It was a week later, just as the afternoon light was beginning to mellow into a golden hue, that the bell above the crumbly corner's door chimed, announcing his arrival. Lily, wiping down the counter after a particularly busy lunch rush, looked up, her hand pausing mid-swipe. He stood framed in the doorway, a silhouette against the fading light. Tall, as the whispers had suggested, with broad shoulders that strained the fabric of his dark, practical jacket. His hair, the color of rich earth, was slightly disheveled, as if he'd just walked through a strong wind, which, given the cottage's location, was entirely probable. But it was his eyes that caught her, even from across the room. They were a startling shade of storm gray, deep-set and intense, scanning the room with a guarded curiosity that seemed to miss nothing. He wasn't old, not grizzled. Perhaps early 30s, like her, but with a gravitas that spoke of experiences far beyond Oakhaven's gentle rhythms. He hesitated for a moment, as if contemplating turning and walking back out into the bracing air. Then, with a subtle shift of his weight, he moved further into the shop, bringing with him the faint, clean scent of salt and something else. Ink, perhaps, or old paper. "Can I help you?" Lily asked, her voice a little softer than usual, a little more uncertain. Her heart, usually as steady as her baking measurements, gave a tiny, unexpected skip. He walked to the counter, his gaze still sweeping the display cases filled with her artfully arranged pastries. I just moved in," he said, his voice a low rumble, slightly rough, like pebbles tumbling in a tide. "Heard this was the place for coffee." "It is," Lily managed, a small, genuine smile blooming on her face. "And quite a few other things. Welcome to Oak Haven." He nodded, a flicker of something unreadable in those gray eyes. "Thank you. I'm Elias Thorne." Lily blinked. "Thorne? We're not related, are we?" she asked, a small laugh escaping her. "I'm Lily Thorne." A ghost of a smile, quick and fleeting, touched his lips. It transformed his face, softening the intensity, revealing a hint of warmth. "Unlikely. My family's from the other side of the country. Just a coincidence, I suppose." He paused, his gaze meeting hers directly for the first time. There was an intelligence there, a deep thoughtfulness, and a guardedness that fascinated her. "So, Lily Thorne, what do you recommend for a man who hasn't had a proper coffee in weeks?" Lily felt a blush creep up her neck. "Well, for coffee, our house blend is quite robust, and for something to go with it, our apple and cinnamon scone is fresh out of the oven, or perhaps a slice of our dark chocolate cherry cake." She gestured to the glass displays, suddenly feeling a surge of pride in her creations, wanting them to impress him. He considered her recommendations, his gaze lingering on the dark chocolate cherry cake. "The cake, then, and a large black coffee." As Lily turned to prepare his order, she could feel his eyes on her, a quiet, almost analytical observation that made her movements feel both clumsy and hyper-aware. She poured the coffee, the rich aroma filling the air, and carefully placed a generous slice of cake onto a plate. When she turned back, he was watching her, his expression still unreadable. "That'll be $7.50, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. He handed her a crisp $10 bill. Their fingers brushed as she took it, and a strange current, like static electricity, zinged between them. He didn't flinch, but his gaze sharpened, as if he'd felt it too. "Keep the change," he said, taking the coffee and cake. He didn't sit at one of the cozy tables, but moved towards the door, pausing only to look back at her. "Thank you, Lily Thorne." And then he was gone, the bell chiming his departure, leaving behind only the lingering scent of sea salt and that faint, intriguing hint of ink. Lily stood there for a moment, the warmth of his touch still on her fingertips, a new kind of whisper echoing in the quiet of her shop. A whisper of possibility, perhaps, or simply the sound of her own heart beating a little faster. Over the next few days, Elias Thorne became a quiet fixture in Oak Haven. Not in the bustling, chatty way of most newcomers, but in the periphery. He was seen walking along the beach in the early mornings, a solitary figure against the vast expanse of the ocean. He bought groceries from Mrs. Gable's general store, his interactions polite but brief. And almost every afternoon around the same time, the bell of the crumbly corner would chime, announcing his return. He always ordered the same thing, a large black coffee, and after that first day, always a slice of dark chocolate cherry cake. He rarely spoke much beyond a polite greeting and his order. He never sat down, always preferring to take his items to go, presumably back to his isolated cottage. Yet, there was an unspoken ritual developing between them. Lily found herself anticipating his arrival. She would catch herself glancing at the clock, her heart doing that small, familiar skip when the time approached. She'd make sure the dark chocolate cherry cake was particularly fresh, the coffee especially robust. She even started leaving a slightly larger slice for him, a silent offering of welcome. One afternoon, a particularly fierce storm had rolled in, lashing rain against the windows of the crumbly corner and rattling the old glass. The shop was empty, save for Lily and the comforting hum of the oven. Just as she was about to close early, the bell chimed, a gust of wind sweeping in with him. Elias stood there, rain clinging to his dark hair, droplets glistening on his eyelashes. He looked wilder, more elemental, framed by the storm. He seemed taller, broader, a force of nature himself. "Terrible weather," Lily said, her voice sounding unusually bright in the quiet shop. "It has its own kind of beauty," he replied, his gaze going to the churning gray of the bay visible through the shop window. He ordered his usual, and as she prepared it, he remained by the counter, instead of moving towards the door. "You really live in that old cottage?" she asked, unable to contain her curiosity. "It must get quite battered in this kind of weather." He nodded. "It does, but it's sturdy. And the view, It's unparalleled. He paused, then looked at her. It's quiet there. I needed quiet. I understand that, Lily said softly, thinking of her own carefully cultivated solitude. Sometimes, quiet is exactly what you need. He picked up his coffee and cake, but this time, he didn't immediately turn to leave. He looked at the empty tables. Mind if I... He gestured vaguely. Of course not, Lily exclaimed, a warmth spreading through her. Please, sit. It's too wild out there to rush off. He chose a table by the window, not the one overlooking the street, but the one with a partial view of the bay. He sat, his broad shoulders hunched slightly, a solitary figure amidst the cozy, empty space. He ate his cake slowly, deliberately, savoring each bite. Lily, pretending to tidy, stole glances at him. He seemed less guarded in this moment, his intensity softened by the storm and the warmth of the shop. After a few minutes he looked up, catching her eye. This cake, he said, his voice softer than she'd heard it before. It's extraordinary. The cherries, they're not too sweet, not too tart. Perfect. Perfect. Lily felt a flush of pleasure. Thank you. It's an old family recipe, my grandmother's actually. She must have been quite a baker, he murmured, taking another bite. She was. She taught me everything, Lily said, a wistful note in her voice. This shop, it was her dream, and then it became mine. He simply listened, his storm-gray eyes fixed on her, an attentiveness that made her feel seen in a way she rarely was. It was a comfortable silence, broken only by the drumming of rain against the window, and the occasional crackle of the old fireplace. And you? Lily ventured, emboldened by the moment. What brings you to Oakhaven, if you don't mind me asking? He hesitated, a shadow crossing his face. I'm a writer, he said finally, his gaze shifting back to the turbulent bay. Or, I was. I'm trying to be again. A writer? Lily's eyes widened. That's wonderful. What kind of books do you write? He gave a dry, humorless chuckle. The kind that didn't sell very well, mostly. Thrillers. Dark, gritty things. He shrugged. I'm trying something different now. Something quieter. Oakhaven is certainly quiet, Lily said, a smile playing on her lips. Perhaps too quiet for thrillers. He met her gaze, and this time, the smile that touched his lips was real, a slow, captivating unfurling. Perhaps. But perhaps it's exactly what I need to find the quieter stories. They fell into silence again, but it was different now, laced with a newfound understanding. He finished his cake and coffee, and when he rose to leave he lingered a moment longer than usual. Thank you, Lily, he said, his voice a low murmur, the thorn absent this time. For the cake, and for the quiet. Anytime, Elias, she replied, her heart doing a happy little flutter. As he stepped back out into the storm, the bell chimed, and a stronger gust of wind seemed to carry a fresh whisper into the shop. This one felt like a promise. In the days that followed, the ritual continued, but it evolved. Elias still came in the afternoons, still ordered his coffee and dark chocolate cherry cake. But now, he often sat at the window table, not always speaking, but his presence was a warm weight in the shop. Sometimes he'd have a small leather-bound notebook with him and he'd scribble in it, his brow furrowed in concentration. Lily, discreetly working behind the counter, found herself observing him, trying to decipher the stories hidden behind those intense gray eyes. She learned small things about him. He preferred his coffee black, no sugar, no cream. He always paid in cash, crisp bills neatly folded. He had a faint scar above his left eyebrow, barely visible but intriguing. He seemed to carry the weight of something unspoken, a quiet melancholy that tugged at her gentle heart. One crisp Saturday morning, Lily was preparing a fresh batch of her famous blueberry scones when she heard the bell chime earlier than usual. She looked up, surprised, to see Elias standing in the doorway, not in his usual jacket, but in a thick wool sweater, a faint blush on his cheeks from the cold. He held something in his hand, a small, dark object. Good morning, he said, a rare smile gracing his features. I hope I'm not too early. Never too early for scones, Lily chirped, genuinely pleased to see him. Coffee, Elias? Please, and a scone if you have them. He walked to the counter, placing the object he held gently onto the polished wood. It was a sea-worn piece of driftwood, smoothed by countless tides, its shape reminiscent of a bird's wing. It was beautiful in its simplicity. "I found this on the beach this morning," he explained, seeing her curious gaze. "It reminded me of something. Thought you might like it." Lily picked it up, her fingers tracing the smooth curves. It was wonderfully tactile, carrying the faint scent of the ocean. "It's beautiful, Elias. Thank you." Her voice was soft, touched by an emotion she couldn't quite name. It was the first gift he had given her, a small, perfect offering from his solitary world. "You're welcome," he said, his gaze meeting hers, a warmth in his eyes that had not been there before. He stayed longer that morning, sipping his coffee, talking about the changing colors of the autumn leaves along the coastal path, the way the light hit the water at dawn. He even asked her about her baking, about the challenges of running a small business, and she found herself opening up to him, talking about her dreams for the crumbly corner, her quiet aspirations. She learned that he hadn't always lived by the sea. He had come from a bustling city, a place he spoke of with a vague sense of unease. He didn't elaborate on why he'd left, or what had made him stop writing, but the longing in his eyes when he spoke of finding his voice again was palpable. "Sometimes," Lily said thoughtfully, "the quiet places are the ones that help you hear yourself best." He looked at her then, a profound look that seemed to pierce through her gentle exterior. "Perhaps you're right, Lily Thorne." Their conversations began to grow, like delicate seedlings reaching for the light. They talked about books, his thrillers, which she confessed she'd never read, and her preference for heartwarming tales. They talked about the sea, its moods, its mysteries. He told her about the solitude of the lighthouse cottage, the way the wind howled around it on stormy nights, and she told him about the comforting warmth of her oven, the joy of feeding people. Lily found herself looking forward to their conversations more than she had anticipated. Elias, for all his initial guardedness, possessed a keen mind and a surprising tenderness. He listened with an intensity that made her feel every word she spoke was important. He remembered details, her favorite kind of tea, a small anecdote she'd once shared about a customer. One afternoon, a particularly boisterous group of tourists filled the crumbly corner, their laughter and chatter echoing through the small space. Elias had come in, ordered his usual, and was about to head to his window table, when an elderly woman, Mrs. Gable's sister from out of town, accidentally jostled him, spilling a tray of sugar packets. "Oh, dearie me, so sorry, young man," she exclaimed, flustered. Before Lily could react, Elias was already kneeling, calmly gathering the packets, a small, reassuring smile on his face. "No harm done, ma'am, just a bit of a mess." His movements were efficient, graceful, and utterly unperturbed. He helped the woman retrieve her dropped purse and offered her a kind word, his presence a steady anchor in the sudden chaos. Lily watched him, a new layer of appreciation unfurling in her heart. He wasn't just intense and guarded. He was kind, too. Thoughtful. He had a quiet strength that was deeply appealing. Later, after the tourists had left and the shop was quiet again, Elias was still at his table, now with his notebook open, his pen moving across the page. Lily brought him a fresh cup of coffee on the house. "You handled that beautifully," she said softly, placing the cup down. He looked up, a faint blush on his cheeks. "Just being polite. It's not often I'm in the middle of such exuberance." He chuckled, a low, pleasant sound. "You seem more at home with the quiet," she observed, leaning against the counter. He nodded, his gaze drifting back to the page in his notebook, though he wasn't writing. "I am, but sometimes it's good to be reminded of the other kind of life." He paused, then looked at her again, his gray eyes holding a flicker of something she couldn't quite decipher. "You have a good life here, Lily. A good, warm, vibrant life, even with the quiet." His words, simple as they were, resonated deeply within her. It was true. Her life was good. But lately, with Elias's presence, it felt like it was gaining a new dimension, a subtle richness she hadn't realized was missing. Days melted into weeks. Autumn's fiery embrace gave way to the crisp, clear air of early winter. The crumbly corner was often filled with the festive scent of gingerbread and spiced apple cider. Elias continued his daily visits, a silent ritual that had become the cornerstone of Lily's afternoons. He still took his coffee and cake, still sat by the window, sometimes writing, sometimes just watching the waves, but their conversations grew longer, deeper. He began to share more of himself, fragments of a past life in the city, hints of a demanding career, the pressure that had eventually led him to Oakhaven. He spoke of a sense of disillusionment, of losing his way, of the quiet desperation that had driven him to seek solace in the solitary lighthouse cottage. He never fully explained the Einweive's disillusionment, what specific event had caused it, but Lily sensed a deep wound, still healing. Lily, in turn, found herself sharing things she hadn't voiced to anyone else. Her quiet dreams of expanding the Crumbly Corner, of writing her own cookbook someday, of the occasional pang of loneliness that sometimes pierced her otherwise content life. She felt a profound sense of trust blooming between them, a fragile, beautiful thing. One afternoon, as the first snowflakes of the season began to dance outside the window, Elias looked up from his notebook, his gaze soft. "You know," he said, his voice a low murmur, "when I first came here, I thought I was running from everything. From the noise, the expectations, the failures." He sighed, a weary sound. "But then I found this place, and I found this." He gestured vaguely around the cozy shop, his gaze settling on her. "And I realized, maybe I wasn't running something, but running I taught something." Lily's heart gave a tender squeeze. She didn't know what to say, what to make of his words. They hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken meaning, with the nascent stirrings of something precious and new dodo. He stood up, his usual farewell. But this time, he paused at the door, his hand on the cold brass. He turned, his gray eyes, usually so guarded, now held an open vulnerability that took her breath away. "Thank you, Lily," he said, his voice barely a whisper, almost lost in the soft fall of snow. "For being here, for the quiet, and for the whispers." Then he was gone, the bell chiming a soft counterpoint to the falling snow, and Lily was left alone in the warm, scented quiet of her shop, her fingers still tingling from the phantom brush of his hand. The last word he'd spoken, whispers, echoed in her mind, a gentle promise of untold stories, of shared secrets, of a love quietly taking root in the heart of Oakhaven. She knew with a certainty that settled deep in her soul that this was just the beginning. She knew with a certainty that settled deep in her soul that this was just the beginning. Lily stood for a long moment, the scent of bergamot and winter spice clinging to the air around her, a comforting anchor in the sudden lightness of her spirit. The snow continued its silent descent outside, painting the world in shades of pearl and silver. But within the shop, a warmth had ignited, a soft, persistent glow that had nothing to do with the crackling fire in the hearth. She touched her fingertips, still tingling, to her lips, a ghost of his touch lingering. "Whispers," he'd said, and the word played on a loop in her mind, a secret melody. What whispers? The whispers of the old town? The whispers of the wind through the pines? Or perhaps, the whispers of a heart beginning to awaken? A gentle sigh escaped her, a mix of wonder and a delightful nervousness. She moved slowly through her shop, her gaze lingering on the shelves, the intricately carved wooden tea boxes, the jars filled with dried herbs and flower petals. Each item, usually a source of quiet contentment, now seemed to hum with a new significance, as if awaiting the story that was about to unfold. She tidied a display of chamomile, straightened a stack of linen tea towels, her movements automatic, her mind still replaying every word, every glance. The next few days passed in a haze of anticipation. The snow continued, blanketing Oakhaven in a pristine hush, making every sound seem muffled, every light glow softer. Lily found herself watching the door, a little more often than usual, her heart giving a little flutter with each chime of the bell, only to settle back into a rhythm of gentle expectation when it wasn't him. She caught herself humming old folk tunes, the kind that spoke of hearth and home, of quiet joys and enduring love. Her blends, usually crafted with careful precision, now seemed to carry an extra touch of magic, each measuring of dried rose petal or star anise infused with a silent wish. She thought about the whispers and found herself listening more intently to the old shop itself. The creaks of the floorboards, the soft sigh of the wind through the eaves, the gentle murmur of the river Oakhaven in the distance. She even started leaving a small cup of her Dreamweaver blend cooling on the counter each evening, just in case he returned unexpectedly, a silent offering to the mystery he represented. Then, 5 days later, just as the afternoon light was beginning to soften into the golden glow of twilight, the bell above the door chimed, and there he was. Leo died. He stood framed against the backdrop of falling snow, a fine dusting of white on the shoulders of his dark coat, a small smile playing on his lips, as if he knew she'd been waiting, or perhaps as if he too had been looking forward to this moment. His eyes, the color of warm honey, met hers across the tranquil space of the shop, and in that gaze, Lily felt a profound sense of recognition, like finding a forgotten melody you always knew. "Lily," he said, his voice a warm murmur that chased away the lingering chill from the doorway. He stepped inside, bringing with him the crisp scent of winter air and something else, something uniquely his, like old books and quiet woods. "Leo," she replied, her voice a little breathier than she intended. She felt a blush creeping up her cheeks, a charming warmth that she hoped he attributed to the crackling fire. "Welcome back. The snow has made Oakhaven quite the winter wonderland, hasn't it?" He brushed a snowflake from his brow. "It has, and your shop, Lily, is a beacon in its midst." He looked around, his gaze lingering on the shelves, the intricate details of the room. "I find myself drawn to its quiet warmth." "It's a comfort," she agreed, moving from behind the counter. "Especially when the world outside is so hushed." She gestured towards a new display she'd created, a collection of herbal remedies for winter ailments. "Are you looking for anything in particular today, or just seeking a respite from the cold?" He chuckled softly, a sound that made a pleasant shiver run down her spine. "Both, perhaps. I confess I've been thinking about your Dreamweaver blend, and the whispers." His eyes twinkled. "Have you heard any new ones?" Lily's heart fluttered. He remembered. "Perhaps," she teased, a playful light in her own eyes. "But whispers are a fickle thing, aren't they? They only reveal themselves to those who truly listen." He leaned against a sturdy oak display table, his posture relaxed, yet utterly captivating. "Then and I shall endeavor to listen more closely. I find myself listening quite a lot these days." He paused, then added, "My work, you see, involves a lot of listening, to old stones, to forgotten blueprints, to the stories that buildings can tell." "You work with buildings?" she asked, intrigued. She had wondered about him, about what brought him to Oakhaven. "I'm an architect," he confirmed, specializing in historical preservation. "I'm here overseeing the restoration of the old Oakhaven Library. It's a magnificent structure, full of character, and yes, full of whispers." He gestured vaguely towards the town square. "The project is quite extensive, and it's likely to keep me here for a few months at least." "A few months?" The words settled over Lily like a comforting blanket. Not a fleeting visitor, but someone who would be here for a while. A delightful sense of possibility unfurled within her. "The library," she mused. "It's a beautiful building. I used to spend hours there as a child. It holds so many memories for the town." "Precisely," he said, his voice imbued with a shared passion. "And my job is to ensure it continues to hold memories for generations to come, while also making it functional for the present. It's a delicate balance." "I imagine so," Lily agreed. "Like blending a new tea, you honor the traditional notes, but you also introduce something fresh, something that speaks to the moment." He smiled, a genuine, open smile that reached his eyes. "An excellent analogy, Lily. You truly understand the essence of things." He walked towards the counter, his gaze sweeping over the various tea caddies. "So, the Dreamweaver blend then, and perhaps something new, something to inspire whispers?" Lily's heart swelled with a quiet joy. He wasn't just a customer. He was a kindred spirit. "I have just the thing," she said, her hands already moving towards a small, unlabeled jar. "It's a blend I've been working on myself, inspired by the quiet strength of the winter pines and the promise of spring's return. I call it Forest's Embrace." She uncapped the jar, offering it to him. Leo leaned in, inhaling deeply. "Oh," he breathed, his eyes closing for a moment. "It's grounding and hopeful, like the earth stirring beneath the snow." He opened his eyes, a profound appreciation shining in them. "You have a gift, Lily." It's simply listening to what the plants tell me, she demurred, though his praise warmed her to her core. Each leaf, each flower has its own story, its own whisper. They talked for what felt like both minutes and hours. He told her about the challenges of the library project, the hidden rot in ancient beams, the unexpected historical discoveries in forgotten corners. She told him about the history of her shop, passed down through her family, about the local herbs she foraged, and her dream of expanding her small backyard garden into a full-fledged apothecary. Their conversation flowed easily, punctuated by comfortable silences, where the only sounds were the soft crackle of the fire and the gentle hum of the old shop. Before he left with a small bag of Dreamweaver and a sample of Forest's Embrace, he paused at the door. "Lily," he said, his gaze serious, "thank you for the warmth, and for the stories, and for the whispers." "Anytime, Leo," she replied, her voice soft. "The shop is always here, and so am I." He gave her a slow, lingering smile, then stepped back into the falling snow, the bell chiming a melody that now felt like a familiar friend. Over the next few weeks, Leo became a fixture in Lily's life, a welcome presence in the quiet rhythm of her days. He didn't come every day, but his visits were regular enough that she began to anticipate them, planning her work around the late afternoon hour when he was most likely to appear. He would arrive, dusted with snow or carrying the crisp scent of the cold, and settle in, often by the small reading nook near the fireplace, sipping on a freshly brewed cup of whatever blend Lily suggested. Their conversations grew deeper, revealing layers of their lives, their philosophies. Lily learned that Leo had a deep love for literature, not just for the buildings that housed it, and they discovered a shared affection for classic poetry and historical novels. He spoke of his travels, of ancient ruins and bustling cities, but always with a quiet reverence for the stories they held. Lily in turn found herself sharing more about her own quiet life in Oakhaven, her passion for herbalism, the comfort she found in the rhythms of nature, and the subtle joys of running a small, independent shop in a town that valued tradition. He told her about his family, a close-knit group living several states away, and how he missed their boisterous Sunday dinners. Lily confessed her own longing for a family of her own, the kind of quiet, comforting presence she'd always dreamed of. There was a vulnerability in these exchanges, a trust slowly building between them like delicate roots intertwining beneath the earth. One particularly blustery afternoon, when the wind howled like a banshee, and the snow fell so thick it blurred the edges of the world, Leo arrived, looking a little weary. He had spent the morning battling a stubborn structural issue at the library, and the cold had seeped into his bones. "Lily," he said, shaking the snow from his coat, a genuine sigh of relief escaping him as he stepped into the warmth. "This place is a haven." "Come in, Leo," she said, her voice soft with concern. "You look frozen. Let me make you something special." She brewed him a mug of her strongest, winter-warmer blend, ginger, cinnamon, star anise, and a touch of cayenne to chase away the chill. As he cupped the warm mug in his hands, steam rising to kiss his face, she watched the tension gradually ease from his shoulders. "Thank you," he murmured, taking a long sip. "That's exactly what I needed." He leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes for a moment. "Sometimes the work feels relentless, like I'm wrestling with ghosts and stubborn stone." Lily sat opposite him, her own mug of chamomile warming her hands. "But important work," she gently reminded him. "You're preserving history, giving it a future." He opened his eyes, a small, grateful smile touching his lips. "You always have a way of putting things into perspective, Lily. You see the heart of the matter." He gazed at her, and in his eyes, she saw not just admiration, but something deeper, something that made her own heart quicken its pace. It's a rare quality. Their eyes held for a moment, a silent conversation passing between them, a recognition of something special growing between them. The air in the shop seemed to thicken, charged with unspoken feelings. Then the bell above the door chimed, breaking the spell. A trio of boisterous tourists bustled in, shaking snow from their hats and exclaiming over the charming array of teas. Leo, ever gracious, immediately offered his chair by the fire to an elderly woman who looked particularly chilled. He helped Lily direct the newcomers to the various blends, his quiet competence a reassuring presence amidst the sudden flurry of activity. Lily found herself watching him, her heart swelling with a warmth that had nothing to do with the roaring fire. He wasn't just thoughtful and intelligent, he was kind, genuinely kind. Once the tourists had departed, laden with their purchases, the shop settled back into its quiet hum. Leo returned to his spot, a comfortable silence falling between them once more. "You're good with people," Lily observed, a soft smile on her face. "Even when they're in a hurry." He shrugged lightly. "I suppose I've learned to appreciate all kinds of stories, even the hurried ones. But I prefer the ones that unfold slowly like a good book, or a new blend." He looked at her, his gaze intense. "Or a conversation in a quiet shop, over a warm cup of tea." Lily felt a blush spread across her cheeks again. The unspoken meaning was clear. He preferred entire conversations. "Leo," she began, suddenly feeling bold. "I was wondering, the library project, it must take up a lot of your time. Do you ever get a chance to simply enjoy Oakhaven, beyond the historical research?" He considered her question, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Not as much as I'd like, I confess. Most evenings I'm poring over blueprints or historical documents, but I have been meaning to explore the trails around the Oakhaven River. They say the frozen waterfalls are quite spectacular this time of year." A spark of an idea ignited within Lily. "They are," she confirmed, her voice filled with enthusiasm. "I know a path that leads to a particularly beautiful spot, where the ice shimmers with all the colors of the rainbow at sunset. I often go there to gather winter berries or just for a quiet walk." She hesitated, then took a breath. "Perhaps, if you ever found yourself with an afternoon free, and you wanted some company, I could show you?" Leo's eyes lit up, a brilliant, genuine light that made Lily's heart sing. "Lily," he said, his voice soft, "I would like that very much, more than you know." He paused, then added, "In fact, I find myself with a rare free afternoon this coming Saturday. Would that work for you?" Lily's smile widened, a joyful warmth spreading through her. "It would be perfect. We could meet here after lunch, say around 1. I could pack us some thermos of hot tea and some oat cakes." "Perfect," he echoed, his gaze lingering on hers. "It's a date then." The word hung in the air, a gentle affirmation, a clear step forward. It wasn't just a walk, it was a promise, a shared anticipation of something more. Lily felt a thrill of excitement, mixed with a comfortable sense of rightness. He stood to leave, the setting sun casting long shadows through the shop. As he reached the door, he turned back to her. "Lily," he said, his voice a low, melodic whisper that stirred something deep within her. "Thank you, for the warmth, for the tea, for the conversation, and most of all, for listening." He smiled, a slow, tender smile that spoke volumes, then stepped out into the deepening twilight. The bell chimed, a joyful echo, and Lily was left alone again. But this time, the quiet wasn't just waiting, it was brimming with the promise of a Saturday afternoon stroll, of shimmering ice and shared whispers, of a love quietly, beautifully, blossoming in the heart of Oakhaven. She knew with a certainty that settled deep in her soul, that this was still just the beginning. Saturday dawned crisp and clear, a perfect autumn day that felt tailor-made for new beginnings. Sunlight streamed through Lily's bedroom window, painting stripes across her worn rug and illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. She stretched, a long, languid movement, a smile already curving her lips before she even fully opened her eyes. The quiet anticipation from last night had ripened into a sweet, humming excitement. She thought of Owen's slow, tender smile, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners, the gentle rumble of his voice when he spoke of the ice rink. She spent the morning puttering around the bookstore, dusting shelves that didn't need it, rearranging displays that were already perfect, her heart doing a little flutter every time the bell chimed, though she knew it was far too early for him. She brewed a fresh pot of herbal tea, the scent of chamomile and lavender filling the cozy space, and tried to focus on a new release, but the words blurred, replaced by images of Owen, of their easy laughter, of the warmth that had settled between them so naturally. Finally, with the clock hands creeping towards 2, she closed the bookstore, a small closed for the afternoon sign hanging jauntily on the door. Back in her apartment above, she carefully chose her outfit. A warm, forest green wool coat, a cream-colored knit sweater, and her favorite worn jeans, paired with sturdy, comfortable boots perfect for walking and hopefully graceful gliding. She braided her hair loosely, letting a few strands escape to frame her face, and added a touch of berry-tinted lip balm. She didn't want to look overdone, just herself, but a slightly more polished, hopeful version. A soft knock at the door startled her, sending a jolt of joyful nerves through her. She took a deep breath, smoothing down her sweater, and opened it. Owen stood there, dressed in a dark blue peacoat, a light gray scarf wrapped around his neck, and a warm smile that instantly melted any lingering apprehension. His eyes, the color of warm honey, met hers, and a comfortable silence settled, rich with unspoken understanding. "Ready for that stroll, Lily?" he asked, his voice a low, pleasant murmur. "More than ready, Owen," she replied, her voice a little breathy. She grabbed her small leather purse and locked the bookstore door behind her. They stepped out onto Oakhaven's main street, the air crisp and invigorating, carrying the faint scent of wood smoke and fallen leaves. The sun cast long shadows, and the vibrant autumn foliage, hues of crimson, gold, and burnt orange, seemed to glow. The town was bustling, but not overwhelmingly so. Families strolled, friends chatted over coffee, and the distant sound of children's laughter echoed from the park. "It's a beautiful day for it," Owen observed, falling into step beside her. Their shoulders brushed lightly, a contact that sent a pleasant warmth through Lily. "It really is," she agreed, looking up at the clear blue sky. "Oakhaven always seems to shine brightest in autumn." "I think you might be right," he chuckled. "There's a certain magic to it, isn't there? Everything feels vibrant, yet also peaceful." They walked in comfortable silence for a while, simply enjoying the scenery and each other's company. They passed the old clock tower, its hands frozen at 3:15, a charming idiosyncrasy of the town that no one bothered to fix. Lily pointed out the small bakery, where the scent of cinnamon rolls always seemed to beckon, and Owen shared a story about how he'd once tried to bake something similar, only to fill his kitchen with smoke. "It's safe to say my talents lie more with wood and ice than with flour and sugar," he admitted with a sheepish grin. "I'm sure you could master anything you put your mind to," Lily said softly, genuinely believing it. "But I'm glad you've chosen to focus on the things you love." He met her gaze, and his smile softened. "Me too, Lily, me too." Their path led them away from the main street, down a quieter lane lined with ancient oak trees, their leaves a fiery tapestry overhead. The path crunched under their boots, the sound a soothing rhythm. "So, what drew you to Oakhaven, Owen?" Lily asked, curious to learn more about him. "You mentioned you're not originally from here." He looked ahead, his brow furrowed in thought for a moment. "No, I grew up in a much larger city, a few hours south. Always loved the energy, but after a while, I started to crave something different. Something." He paused, then continued. "My grandfather had a cabin upstate, and I spent a lot of summers there. I loved working with my hands, building things, being outdoors. The city just didn't offer that." "And Oakhaven reminded you of those summers?" "In a way," he nodded. "It has that small town feel, that sense of community. And when I saw the old ice rink, in need of a lot of love, I just knew. It felt like a calling to bring it back to life, to create a place where people could make memories, just like I did as a kid on those frozen ponds upstate." "That's beautiful, Owen," Lily said, genuinely touched by his passion. "It's clear how much you care about it. The rink is a true gem." "It's getting there," he said, a hint of pride in his voice. "It's been a lot of work, but seeing it come to life, seeing people enjoy it, that's what makes it worthwhile." They talked about their shared love for quiet pursuits, his for woodworking and the precision of ice, hers for the comforting solace of books and stories. They discovered a mutual appreciation for old movies and the smell of rain, for early morning walks and the simple joy of a good cup of tea. It felt effortless, as if they had known each other for years, their conversations weaving and flowing like a gentle stream. As they rounded a bend, the familiar, cheerful strains of music drifted towards them. The Oakhaven ice rink, nestled at the edge of the town park, came into view. Owen. It was even more charming than Lily remembered from his descriptions. Strands of warm fairy lights were strung across the railings, twinkling like captured stars against the gathering dusk. The ice, a pristine sheet of silver, reflected the soft glow, and the air hummed with the joyful energy of skaters. "There it is," Owen said, a wide, genuine smile spreading across his face. "My happy place." Lily's heart fluttered. "It looks magical, Owen." He led her towards the entrance, the scent of hot cocoa and a faint chill of ice meeting them. Inside the small rustic lodge, the atmosphere was warm and inviting. A stone fireplace crackled merrily, and the walls were adorned with vintage ice skating posters and old wooden skis. A friendly young man behind the counter, probably a local teenager, waved at Owen. "Hey, Owen. Busy day today," he called out. "Looks like it, Sam. How's everything holding up?" Owen replied, his tone easy and familiar. "Running smooth as ice, boss." Sam grinned. Owen turned to Lily. "Ready to strap on some blades?" Lily felt a ripple of nerves mixed with excitement. "It's been a while, I'll admit. My last ice skating experience involved more falling than gliding." She laughed, a light, genuine sound. "No worries at all," Owen assured her, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "We'll take it slow. It's like riding a bike you never truly forget." He led her to the skate rental counter, and soon they were lacing up their boots. Lily's skates felt a little heavy, a little stiff, but the familiar sensation brought back a rush of childhood memories. Owen, on the other hand, laced his skates with practiced ease, his movements fluid and confident. He stood up, testing the blades, then offered Lily a hand. "Ready?" Taking his outstretched hand, Lily felt a comforting strength in his grip. She stood a little wobbly at first and took a tentative step onto the rubber mat leading to the ice. The cold air from the rink met them, invigorating and fresh. Stepping onto the ice was like entering another world. The soft murmur of conversations, the rhythmic scrape of blades, the cheerful music, it all created a symphony of joy. Lily took a hesitant push, her arms flailing slightly. "Whoa, there." Owen chuckled gently, his hand firm on her back, steadying her. "Slow and steady, just focus on keeping your weight forward, and let your knees bend a little." He skated backward in front of her, his movements graceful and effortless, a stark contrast to her own tentative shuffles. "Hold on to my hands," he offered, extending them. Lily gratefully took his hands, her fingers intertwining with his. His palms were warm and reassuring. With his support, she felt a little more confident. He guided her, slowly at first, around the perimeter of the rink. His presence was a solid anchor, his voice a calm encouragement. "You're doing great, Lily. See, you're already getting the hang of it." His words, combined with the gentle pressure of his hands, slowly dispelled her apprehension. She found a rhythm, pushing off, gliding, pushing off again. The sensation of soaring across the ice, even slowly, was exhilarating. They moved as one, a silent conversation between their hands, a shared dance. A group of exuberant teenagers zipped past them, laughing loudly. Lily swerved slightly, nearly losing her balance. Owen's grip tightened, pulling her closer, his body a shield. "All right there?" he asked, his voice low with concern, his face close to hers. She could see the flecks of gold in his eyes, the warmth of his breath on her cheek. "Fine," she breathed, a blush rising to her cheeks, more from the proximity than the near fall. "Just a little rusty." He smiled, a gentle, understanding smile. "It's all part of the fun. Let's try a little faster, shall we? You've got it." With renewed confidence, Lily found herself gliding with more ease. They began to talk, their voices a little louder to be heard over the music, their words punctuated by the rhythmic scrape of their skates. Owen shared anecdotes from his days as a competitive skater, humble stories of triumphs and humorous tales of mishaps. Lily told him about the first book she ever loved, a fantastical adventure that had sparked her lifelong passion for stories. At one point, Owen gracefully spun around her, letting go of one hand, his eyes sparkling with playful mischief. Lily laughed, a genuine joyful sound that surprised even herself. She hadn't laughed like that in ages. "Show off," she teased, but her smile was wide. He bowed dramatically, still gliding. "Only for you, Lily." The words, light-hearted as they were, sent a shiver down her spine, a sweet warmth spreading through her chest. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery oranges and soft purples, the fairy lights around the rink seemed to glow even brighter. The music shifted to a slower, more melodic tune, and the atmosphere grew softer, more intimate. Owen pulled her closer, their bodies moving in sync, a comfortable closeness that felt entirely natural. He didn't try to teach her anything complex, just allowed them to glide, shoulder to shoulder, hand in companionable silence. Lily looked at Owen, his profile illuminated by the soft lights, a serene expression on his face. He seemed completely at home here, on the ice, surrounded by the joy he had created. And for a moment, she felt completely at home too, right there beside him. After what felt like both an instant and an eternity, they decided to call it a night on the ice. Their legs ached pleasantly as they carefully made their way back to the lodge. They returned their skates, their fingers brushing as they handed them over. "You did remarkably well, Lily," Owen said, his eyes warm with approval. "I think we might have to make this a regular thing." "I wouldn't mind that at all," she admitted, a shy smile playing on her lips. They settled onto a plush sofa near the crackling fireplace, the warmth a welcome comfort after the chill of the rink. Owen ordered 2 steaming mugs of hot cocoa, topped with generous swirls of whipped cream, from Sam Dai. "This is exactly what I needed," Lily said, cradling the warm mug in her hands, inhaling the sweet, chocolatey aroma. "Thought so," Owen replied, his gaze soft as he watched her. "It's my post-date ritual. Keeps the chill out." They sipped their cocoa, the rich sweetness a perfect end to the exhilarating activity. The lodge was still bustling, but their corner felt like a private haven, insulated by the warmth of the fire and the quiet hum of their connection. "Thank you, Owen," Lily said, looking at him sincerely. "Today was wonderful. The stroll, the skating, everything." "The pleasure was all mine, Lily," he said, his voice gentle. "I truly enjoyed your company, and watching you find your rhythm on the ice was a joy." He paused, then leaned forward slightly, his elbows resting on his knees. "I hope you don't mind me asking, but is there a story behind your love for books? Beyond just enjoying them, I mean." Lily's gaze softened as she looked into the dancing flames of the fireplace. "There is. My mother. She owned a small bookstore, much like mine, when I was growing up. It was her passion, her sanctuary. She passed away when I was quite young, and my father, he just couldn't bear to keep it open. He sold it, and we moved away from our little town." Her voice was soft, laced with a familiar, distant ache. "For years, I missed it. The smell of old paper, the quiet rustle of pages, the feeling of being surrounded by stories. It felt like a piece of her, a piece of home, was gone." She took a slow breath. "When I found Oakhaven, and saw the empty storefront that would become the open book, it felt like destiny. Like I was reclaiming a part of her, a part of myself. Every time I open the doors, I feel her presence, a quiet encouragement. It's more than just a business to me, Owen. It's a legacy, a dream, a connection." Owen listened intently, his gaze unwavering, full of genuine empathy. He didn't offer platitudes or try to fix anything, just allowed her words to hang in the air, validating her experience. When she finished, he simply reached out and gently covered her hand with his, a silent gesture of comfort and understanding. His touch was warm, solid, and incredibly reassuring. "Thank you for sharing that with me, Lily," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "That's a beautiful story, and it makes perfect sense why the open book feels so special." He squeezed her hand lightly. "Your mother would be incredibly proud of you." Tears pricked at Lily's eyes, but they were not tears of sadness, but of profound gratitude. It had been a long time since she had shared that deeply personal story with anyone, and Owen's gentle reception of it was a testament to the safety and trust she felt in his presence. They stayed there for a while longer, talking about everything and nothing, the fire casting dancing shadows on their faces. The lodge slowly emptied as the evening wore on, until it was just them, the quiet hum of the fire, and the fading strains of distant music. Finally, Owen looked at his watch. "It's getting late, and I imagine you've had a full day." Lily nodded, a comfortable weariness settling over her. "It was a perfect day, Owen." He walked her back to the bookstore, the streetlights casting a warm glow on the silent main street. The air was colder now, carrying the crisp scent of winter's approach. As they reached her door, the bell above it silent in the late hour, he turned to her. "Lily," he began, his voice soft, "I truly had a wonderful time today, More than wonderful, actually. Me too, Owen, she replied, looking up at him, her heart full. He hesitated for a moment, then reached out and gently tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers brushing softly against her cheek. I'd like to do this again, very soon. Perhaps dinner next time, somewhere quiet, where we can talk more. A warm flush spread through Lily. I like that very much, Owen. His smile was slow and tender, just like the one from the night before, but this time, it held an added layer of warmth, a deeper connection forged over shared stories and shimmering ice. Good, he murmured. I'll call you. He lingered for a moment longer, his gaze holding hers. Then, with a soft nod, he turned and began to walk away, his figure disappearing into the gentle glow of the streetlights. Lily watched him go, a profound sense of peace settling over her. She touched her cheek where his fingers had rested, feeling the lingering warmth. As she stepped inside her apartment, the silence that greeted her was no longer just anticipation. It was a comforting echo of shared laughter, of whispered stories, of warm hands clasped together and the exhilarating glide across the ice. The quiet was now filled with the promise of future dinners, of deeper conversations, of a love that was no longer just blossoming, but steadily, beautifully taking root in the heart of Oakhaven and in her own. She knew with a certainty that settled deep in her soul that this was still just the beginning, and she couldn't wait to turn the next page. The winter slowly thawed, taking with it the crisp bite in the air, but leaving behind the warmth that had bloomed between them. Days grew longer, painting Oakhaven in shades of soft green and vibrant bloom. Their dinners at the charming little bistro turned into walks along the riverbank, hand in hand, discovering hidden paths and whispering secrets to the rustling leaves. He learned about her quiet passion for painting, how she found inspiration in the subtle shifts of light on the old stone buildings, and the way the Oakhaven sky held 1,000 different blues. She, in turn, discovered his surprising talent for carpentry, the steady strength of his hands not just in holding hers, but in crafting beautiful, intricate pieces from discarded wood, each one telling a silent story. Their conversations went beyond shared interests, delving into the quiet corners of their pasts. She spoke of her move to Oakhaven, seeking a slower pace, a place where roots could truly take hold after a life that had felt a little too transient. He shared his own journey, the reasons he'd chosen to stay, drawn by the genuine kindness of its people and the comforting rhythm of small-town life. There were moments of vulnerability, small admissions of fears and hopes woven into the fabric of their daily interactions. A shared glance across a crowded room, a spontaneous touch on the arm, a comforting silence that spoke volumes. These were the brushstrokes painting their love story. Oakhaven, ever observant, watched their love story unfold with quiet delight. Mrs. Gable, from the bakery, would slip them an extra scone with their morning coffee, a knowing twinkle in her eye. Old Mr. Henderson, perched on his bench by the town square, would offer a nod and a gentle smile as they passed, his gaze filled with the wisdom of many seasons. Their presence together became a familiar and welcome sight, a testament to the town's enduring magic of bringing kindred spirits together. They helped organize the spring fair, him meticulously setting up stalls, her painting whimsical signs that captured the town's spirit. It wasn't just angry love blossoming, but their roots deepening within the community itself. One warm evening, sitting on her porch swing, the scent of honeysuckle heavy in the air, she leaned her head against his shoulder. I used to think, she began softly, that finding a place to belong meant finding a quiet corner for myself. But it turns out, it means finding she. He tightened his arm around her, his chin resting gently on her hair. And I thought I was content with my own company, with the simplicity of Oakhaven. But you, my dear, you've shown me a whole new spectrum of joy I didn't even know I was missing. It wasn't a grand declaration, but a quiet, profound understanding that settled between them, warm and true. It was the realization that their individual journeys, though different, had always been leading them to this very spot, to each other. The summer unfolded in a blur of sun-drenched days and star-dusted nights. Picnics by the lake, impromptu dances in her living room to old records, long drives with no destination, just the joy of being together. One crisp autumn afternoon, as the leaves turned Oakhaven into a riot of crimson and gold, he led her to a secluded spot they'd discovered on one of their first walks, a small clearing overlooking the winding river, framed by ancient oak trees. The air was cool, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and distant wood smoke. He turned to her. His eyes, usually so full of quiet mirth, now held a deeper, more serious light. He reached into his pocket, not for a ring, but for a small, intricately carved wooden bird, a robin, her favorite. "This," he said, his voice a little rough with emotion, "is a symbol of home, of new beginnings, and of coming back to a safe harbor. My grandmother used to say robins brought good luck and true love." He took her hand, his thumb tracing the lines on her palm. "You are my home, my new beginning, and my truest love. I don't want to turn any more pages without you by my side. Will you build a life with me, here in Oakhaven? A life that's ours together?" Tears pricked her eyes, hot and sweet. It wasn't a question of marriage, not yet, but something even deeper, a promise of shared existence, of intertwining their paths irrevocably. "Yes," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Oh yes, 1,000 times yes." He smiled, a slow, radiant smile that lit up his entire face, and pulled her into a warm embrace. The wooden robin, nestled in her hand, felt like a tangible piece of their future, a promise as solid and enduring as the ancient oaks surrounding them. Over the next few months, their shared life began to take shape. They found a small cottage on the edge of town, with a sun-drenched garden and a porch swing just like hers. He crafted custom furniture, filling their home with the warmth of his hands and heart. She painted vibrant landscapes and portraits that now adorned their walls, each stroke infused with the joy of her new life. Their laughter echoed through the rooms, mingling with the scent of freshly baked bread and blooming flowers. One evening, as the first snowflakes of winter began to fall, dusting Oakhaven in a pristine white, they sat by the crackling fireplace, a comfortable silence between them. He held her close, her head resting on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart. The quiet was no longer just a comforting echo of shared laughter and whispered stories, but a full, rich symphony of their life together. It was the promise of countless future dinners, of deeper conversations, of a love that had blossomed beautifully and was now deeply, wonderfully rooted. This wasn't just the beginning anymore. This was their beautiful, enduring happily ever after, unfolding page by page, in the heart of Oakhaven, and in their own intertwined souls. And it was, she knew, the most perfect story she could ever have imagined.